Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Quick shout out to the leadership at Teamsters Local 776 in Harrisburg. Listeners sent me a photo of their truck delivering a truckload of water down to the folks in Dallas after the big freeze. According to the person who sent me the story, they sent down 2 union stewards from ABF, Chalmer Edgen and Gary Teeter. They drove the Teamsters rig down during the freeze, and good on them. And look, not surprisingly, I didn't see that in the news anywhere. The local news didn't pick that up, probably because they didn't tell them, because they never do. But I'm going to give them some credit, and I appreciate the letting me know about that. But here again, good stuff on the COVID relief bill, good stuff on the American Rescue Plan. And for me, as I said, a big part of it is helping those retirees and shoring up that multi-employer pension funds. And here to share some thoughts on, how that got in, why it's so important, I've asked John Murphy to come talk with us. John's an international vice president at large with the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. John, thanks for taking time for us.
It's my pleasure to be here, Rick.
So this is something that I have been working on and talking about for well over a decade. I go back, it got to be at least 10, 12 years when I had Bob Casey on talking about we need to shore up multi-employer pension funds. It's finally in here.
That's right. It's been a long road to get some kind of legislative relief from the multi-employer union pension system, but we finally did it. There's one more step to go, but it should be fairly easy. The House needs to vote on the Senate version of the COVID-19 relief package, that may happen tomorrow or Wednesday. In that package is the Butch Lewis Emergency Pension Plan Relief Act of 2021. And what this bill will do, Rick, it will provide enough financial assistance to the critical and declining pension plans and the critical plans to pay 100% of pension benefits over the next 30 years and keep it solvent at the end of that period. So it's an incredible piece of legislation. It really will lift huge anxiety off the shoulders of retirees and their spouses, and give them some peace of mind, so they can enjoy their golden years. So it really is a fantastic bill.
No, it is. And for me, I had someone ask me about it. I said, it's really a big anti-poverty program, because if you go and you do what has been talked about and slashing retirees' pensions, people who are retired now, you go and you start talking about slashing 50, 60% of what they're living on now, you're immediately putting those people into some level of poverty and making their lives worse, and probably having to force many of them back to taking low-wage jobs that would make them exploitable. So for me, this is a smart piece of legislation, but it's also a compassionate one.
Yes, and it really recognizes the importance of making sure that retirees, elderly, can live out their lives in comfort. It's been said that if the multi-employer pension system was allowed to collapse, the next step in this war on middle-class working Americans would be to start reducing Social Security benefits. And so by coming up with this relief package, there's a real message out there to the country that protecting the retirement security of all Americans is a paramount issue for the Democratic Party.
No, and that's important to point out, because I don't believe Donald Trump was ever going to sign this, and I know the Republicans were never going to move this. I know there was some toying around with maybe Trump would sign it. They were never going to do it. And the thing that's interesting to me is I know a lot of Trump supporters who were going to be harmed when these pensions got cut. So I find it interesting that they're now going to have to live with the reality that it was Joe Biden, who they despise, and the Democrats who saved their behinds.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly, Rick. I can tell you that there were 3 times in the last 18 months leading up to December 2020 when Trump could have done something and he refused.
Right.
The Republicans, some of them, led retirees to believe that they were sympathetic and they wanted to help. But every time they had a chance to do something, help break the logjam, they declined. So that's why the Democrats made a decision. The leadership of the Democratic Party, they were going to put a pension relief bill in the COVID-19 package because they knew that this would be their only chance of getting it passed. So the intransience of the Republican Party, we finally have overcome it.
No, and that's a good thing. I mean, but what do you say to the person, John, who goes, well, you bailed these guys out. What about the future? Is this going to shore up the multi-employer system on into the future? Given the fact that the numbers of people who are in these union funds are dwindling, is this going to shore this up till the end? How do you see this playing out?
Yeah, yes, it will. By funding the pension benefits through 2051, those pension plans that were in trouble at the end of that period are going to be in a much better financial position because they will not have drained all their assets. They can actually use their assets to prudently to gain investment income during that period. So they'll be in a better point.
They'll be in a better place long term. But because here's my problem. I look at these multi-employer defined benefit pension funds, which are going away. I mean, they're the dinosaur in today's society because we've been forced to live with these defined contribution plans. And for me, the what destroyed these funds was a couple of things. One, the dwindling number of members because of the constant attacks on organized labor, which is why we need something like the PRO Act to get more people to join and form unions. But more importantly, it was the fact that employers started pushing for these defined contribution plans that allowed them to get away from the responsibility of ensuring their workers have retirement security.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. As you know, Rick, the economy in this country has never been kind to middle-class American workers. Most of them are raising kids, and they find it very difficult to save. And so the false lure of a defined contribution plan where workers fund their future retirement by taking wages and put it into these defined contribution plan. Most workers can't afford to take sizable amounts of their weekly pay and put it into it. So therefore, these defined contribution plans really won't provide enough money for American workers. And you're absolutely right. The decline of the labor movement since the end of World War II is one of the main reasons why our pension plans have declined. You add in adverse court rulings taking away the weapons that unions pioneered, like sit-down strikes, intermittent strikes, all of which the courts and the National Labor Relations Board have declared to be illegal. Those kinds of weapons that they took away from us, including secondary boycotts, have led to the decline of labor. So we have less people in private sector labor unions today than we've ever had before, even though the number of union members roughly is around 13 million to 14 million. Notably, a lot of that is because of public sector union members who are in public sector pension plans. So bills like the PRO Act, which I'm sure you have briefed your listeners to, will help overcome the laws that make it so difficult for workers to join unions. I want to point out, and I'm sure you've told your listeners also about this, about a week ago, President Joe Biden did a videotape message to American workers, really targeted for the Amazon workers in Alabama, telling them they had a right to join the union. It was their choice. The employer could not interfere or coerce or intimidate them. That statement, which lasted approximately 4 minutes, is an outstanding turning point in labor history. Joe Biden is the most pro-labor president of the United States since FDR. And that election, which is at the ballots will be counted in Alabama at the end of March, will really be a breakthrough. Amazon, Jeff Bezos, is applying every trick in the union busting playbook to try to scare people away. So Joe Biden's statement was absolutely uplifting for those workers.
No, absolutely. And as I said, he's been the most pro-union president of my lifetime, and that video is part of it. Also firing Peter Robb and his number 2 there on day 1 by 5 o'clock in the most unceremonious fashion of an at-will employee. There's the door. Was equally, for me, was one of those high moments. But here's the thing, and this is where I come back to the fact that we need to grow the number of people in unions, because these defined contribution pension plans that have been forced on working people, the average, I read a statistic the other day, the average worker has about $18,000. We've got a retirement crisis that's coming. So the next fight for the labor movement is, while we've shored up the pensions for our members and for people in multi-employer funds, is fighting to make sure that all people have some bit of retirement security and clean up the mess that the last 40 years have saddled us with.
You're absolutely right. A mark of a just society is how it treats the sick, the weak, and the elderly. And retirement security, providing income for our senior citizens, is a hallmark of our way of going toward a just society. It really is an important. I think that over the next decade, as Republicans try to go after Social Security, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the fight for retirement security will be as great as the fight to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour.
No, absolutely. And look, there's the other part of that, $15 and a union. That right. To me is the important part of all of that. Now, let me ask you this. I know you were I think you were organizing director for the Teamsters for a while, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, I know you led the overnight campaign back in the 90s that I did some work on.
Yes.
I'm looking at this PRO Act. In your capacity when you wore the hat as organizing director, would what they're proposing have helped? Would it have made it easier for those workers who, many of them I talked to said they absolutely wanted to have a union, but they were just getting beaten constantly? Would the PRO Act actually have helped?
Yes, because it would have put significant penalties on employers who were found to have coerced, interfered, or intimidated with workers' ability to make a free choice about whether they wanted to join a union or not in a secret ballot election. It will, as you know, Rick, better than most people, there are no significant penalties today under current law that would discourage employers from waging anti-union campaigns. If we can change that and put significant penalties in place, it will back off some of them. And Jeff Bezos, who claims to be this enlightened employer, as you know, at the start of the Christmas shopping season, in the last quarter of 2020, he made a big deal about raising the starting wage to $15 an hour. And yet, the productivity piece count work that they impose on the workers, pushing them, you got to do more, you got to do more. Why do you have to go to the bathroom? Those kinds of things are reminiscent of the sweatshops in the early 20th century. So that's why this election is so important, because if we can organize Amazon, then Walmart will be the next target to do it. These big employers who have been hiding behind the court decisions and weak labor laws won't be able to get away with it any longer.
Yeah, and then the next fight in that, and especially with Amazon, is this fight against employee misclassification, as they're moving more and more towards this independent contractor model, and which I think is extremely dangerous. And I'm hoping that we address this in the coming years.
Yes, and as you know, Rick, the Teamsters have been the leader against the misclassification con game, particularly with the port drivers in all of the major ports in the United States. We've been waging a battle with some success in California in getting misclassification rectified by the legislature. And there have been some early court decisions agreeing with our approach. But it has to be done nationwide, because look at the efforts around Uber and Lyft. They spent millions and millions of dollars fighting back the classification of their drivers as employees in California. So even though we're on the right side of the angels on this issue, we're up against some very powerful financial interest with deep pockets.
No, at some point we got to fight back at this, and I'm glad to see that the PRO Act is going to come up on. I think they're talking about Wednesday or Thursday. This is a conversation I think as a country we have to have, and I'm glad that Joe Biden is in the White House to help us lead this conversation. But John, I appreciate your time, your thoughts. Always good talking with you, my friend. Have a great night.
Well, thank you, Rick. Hope to see you soon.
Good stuff. John Murphy, International Vice President at Large with the Teamsters Union. This, again, I go back to this, this reality that we most certainly need to have major labor law reform in this country, and we need to do it soon. And the PRO Act is part of that. I'm a big supporter of going back and undoing Taft-Hartley and all the horrible things that came with that. But the PRO Act would be a step in the right direction. Gonna take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You listen to the Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.